Jared Jodry. I'm also pleased to announce federal charges today in connection with yesterday's shooting that injured 2 ATF special agents and an ATF task force officer. Eugene McLaurin of Chicago was charged in federal court today with assault on an ATF special agent using a deadly weapon. As alleged in the complaint that was filed today, 2 ATF special agents and an ATF task force officer were working in the early morning on the south side of Chicago yesterday in connection with a covert investigation when they noted that another vehicle was following them. They were able to record the license plate of that other vehicle. When the agents in TFO approached the expressway in their unmarked vehicle, the driver of the other vehicle, with his window down, began firing at them. All 3 officers were injured. Fortunately, they've been treated and none of their injuries are life-threatening. Police were able to locate the vehicle from which the shots were fired, and in a later search, Mr. McLaurin's ID was found in that vehicle. Mr. McLaurin, as described in the complaint, was found at a house near where that vehicle was parked, and he was taken into custody by the Chicago police. And as outlined in the complaint, he acknowledged that he was the driver of the vehicle and that he fired the shots. Mr. McLaurin had his initial appearance this afternoon, and he's been detained in custody. We are deeply grateful for the work that our law enforcement partners do every day, and in particular for the outstanding work by ATF, Chicago Police, Illinois State Police, and others in connection with this shooting. And with that, I'll turn it over to ATF Special Agent in Charge, Kristen DeTinio.
Thank you. So first, I'd like to thank First Assistant John Kokoris and Superintendent Brown of the Chicago Police Department. The charge announced today is a direct result of the tireless efforts among the men and women of law enforcement in our community. None of us could have done this alone, and we are grateful to the U.S. Attorney's Office for their efforts to quickly charge this case. Let me be clear, we are in the fight against gun violence together. We need the cooperation of our entire community, not only our law enforcement community, but the community at large. I assure you, those responsible for this heinous crime will be brought to justice, and all those who terrorize the community using gun violence will be held accountable. I commend all members of law enforcement for their heroism every single day while protecting our community. I'm so thankful that these 2 agents and task force officer survived this attack on their lives and on our profession. Thank you. I will turn it over to my colleague, Superintendent Brown.
Thank you, Kristen. I just want to acknowledge the hard investigative work done by our detectives after this event occurred. The work on the ground, putting the pieces together, following up, collaborating with our ATF partners along with our U.S. Attorney's Office was extraordinary good work, basic police work that brought this offender to justice. We will not relent in our fight against gun violence, protecting the people of Chicago. And I just want to acknowledge the hard work, the bravery and courage it takes in the most challenging time to be a police officer in law enforcement. I just want to thank the dedication it takes to do the work now, and bringing this person to justice. This is just another example of that great work. Thank you.
Can you please explain the charges? Why is there only 1 count at this point? When people are hurt? Can you explain that?
Sure. The question is, why only 1 count at this time when 3 people were injured? And the reason is that that is a sufficient charge for a criminal complaint to initiate the criminal justice process. The complaint is not the charging document on which a person would stand trial. That would be an indictment, and so the investigation is ongoing, and the fact that there's 1 charge in the complaint does not prevent additional charges later in an indictment.
Is that what you're expecting at this point?
We won't comment at this time as to what we would be expecting in an indictment, except to say that the investigation is ongoing.
Is there another suspect, and if so, can you talk at all about it? That was the question, or what the status is?
The question was, is there another suspect, and can we comment on that person's status? And we're not going to comment on that, on whether there are other suspects at this time.
How are the officer and the agents? Can you talk at all about how they're doing?
Sure, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Special Agent in Charge, Detinio, on that.
Sure thing. So all three, the two agents and the Chicago Police Task Force officer, were treated and released from the hospital.
Another question
Can you
for,
tell us about the undercover investigation that was going on and the use of the plainclothes? Are I team learning that the defendant wasn't aware that these were officers and may have been confused that they were rival gang members? What can you say about that confusion and the battles on the streets and maybe someone mistaking someone else not for officers but fellow criminals?
Sure. The question was, what could we talk about with regard to the undercover operation and the possibility that the defendant mistook officers for rival gang members? We won't get into any details about undercover operations, except to say that covert and undercover operations are a very important tool for law enforcement in fighting violent crime in Chicago. We do allege in the complaint that the defendant did state during questioning that he believed that the occupants of the other car were rival gang members, but we won't comment beyond that.
question for Agent
Yes.
Detinio. The superintendent over the past couple of days has talked about illegal guns and recovery of illegal guns in Chicago, 6,000 nearly so far. Expected to be 12,000 by the end of the year. What steps is the ATF taking in coordination with the Chicago Police Department to combat illegal gun trafficking?
So what I can tell you is that we enjoy an incredible collaboration with all of our law enforcement partners in this area, including the Chicago Police Department, including our prosecutors, and that we are making every effort we can to combat all forms of gun violence, including those who criminally possess, criminally use guns, and those who supply them with firearms.
Does that number surprise you, the fact that there might be 12,000 illegal guns? That's a much higher number than there has been in previous years.
So I'm not going to comment on my opinion of the guns that are available to criminals in Chicago, only to say that we make every effort we can to ensure that firearms stay in the hands of those who are allowed to possess them.
Was a weapon recovered in this case that was involved in the shooting?
We're not going to comment at this time about whether a weapon was recovered. The complaint does not allege that a weapon was recovered.
And how about Mr. McLaurin's, our ITs learned he has a history with police that stretches over a decade, in custody numerous times, facing current criminal charges in an unrelated case at the time of the shooting. Can you speak about any of that?
We won't discuss Mr. McLaurin's criminal history, and that was something that was not discussed today at the initial appearance.
Was he the only one in the car? The driver the only one?
Well, the complaint is silent as to whether there were other occupants of the vehicle.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Can the superintendent answer some questions in regards to the OIG's report today that came out saying that officers of, applicants of color, try to get it up, Chicago Police Department's multi-state hiring process reduces actually the representation of minority candidates from the initial application to the point of hire.
So this report, and I'll be real brief because we want to stay on topic, was during the Rahm Emanuel administration's tenure. This is not a current day report of what's transpired in Chicago Police Department, and we'll just leave it at that. But going forward, we'll be addressing diversity in the department in a much more transparent way than we can for this particular press conference. We want to stick on topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.